In a world gone mad, only rationality and common sense can save it. It's Andrew and Jerry Save the World with your hosts, Andrew Langer and Jerry Rogers. And now, here's Andrew and Jerry.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Andrew and Jerry Save the World, episode 66. Andrew and Jerry knew you were going to ask that question. I'm Andrew Langer.
Jerry Rogers.
And we got a lot to unpack today. Allegations or evidence that the Biden family took millions upon millions, millions of dollars.
20 million thus far. But yeah. Here's a larger question. Joe Biden has had millions of dollars in the bank for years.
Right.
And he claims it's because of book deals and because of public speaking engagements. But on his financial disclosure forms, he doesn't give details.
Right.
He just gives amounts.
Yes.
So on top of that, see, I thought the evidence of fiscal wrongdoing or monkey business has been present all the time.
Sure.
But now, as Jonathan Turley says in today's or yesterday's New York Post, Joe Biden absolutely, all caps, benefited from Hunter Biden's foreign business deals.
Right. See, and I love the tweet that was out there in which they laid it out there. First, it was Joe Biden never talked business with his son. Then it was Joe Biden never talked to his son's business partners. Then it was Joe Biden never talked business with his son's business partners. And now it's you can't prove that any of the $20 million went to Joe Biden, which is just
and what's so disturbing, and again, this is it, right? The left has the mainstream, the establishment, whatever title we give, they're so dogmatic. They're so religious in their viewpoints that they can't recognize what's happening in front of their faces. So what do we hear from the Washington Post, New York Times crowd, from the Democrats, from CNN, from Morning Joe? We hear that there's the appearance of scandal.
Right.
Right. So
yes.
So I was walking down.
It's just the appearance of a scandal.
I was walking down Belmont Avenue in the Bronx, and some guy came out with a gun and hit the other guy over the head, stole his wallet. I witnessed the appearance of a robbery, the appearance of a mugging.
Here's what gets me, right, is that we've now come from a president has to be impeached because he was benefiting from people spending $1,500 a night in a hotel that had his name on it, right? Remember, there was a whole lawsuit. There were several lawsuits, but one specifically from the Attorney General of Maryland about the inurement of benefit because the president, right, people were spending $1,500 a night at his hotel or the hotel that his corporation owned in Washington, D.C. That somehow was scandalous. The vice president's son making tens of millions of dollars, or the Biden family making tens of millions of dollars. See, this is what's important, right, Jerry? Because again, they never demonstrated. That was always my question with regards to Trump, right? Which was, okay, show me the benefit. Show me something that Donald Trump allegedly did for these $1,500 a night hotel rooms. Right, we go back to, and I've talked about this before. This is what is important. Substance matters. I haven't said that phrase in a very long time. Again, the issue of the quid pro quo, giving something and something is gotten in return. We know that the vice president at the time was influencing and working overtime to influence foreign policy. He threatened a foreign president with the withholding of aid. Remember, we impeached the president over this.
And let me make a connection with the Trump impeachment, the first impeachment, right? A lot of it had to do with that phone call to the sitting Ukrainian president. And remember, at the time, the former vice president, now President Joe Biden, was at the forefront pushing for impeachment.
Right.
It seems to me that Biden, the Democrats, were pushing impeachment in order to hide the Biden bribery scandal.
It always was about that, and it was always about weaponizing the instruments of power, right?
Yes, of course.
Instruments of power to both. So this is something Jerry and I were talking about yesterday, which is
this sounds like a very bad Steven Seagal Netflix movie. This is, I mean, the premise is so outrageous, but it's the truth.
Right.
The scandal, the use of government to go after your political enemies. The Bidens, I'm sorry, Joe came into office with this reputation of being Uncle Joe, of being, the good old guy. He might say crazy things, but at the end of the day,
the adults are now in charge.
You can have a beer with him, that sort of thing. Someone did a piece. It might have been Rich Lowry. I don't remember who, but it was at National Review, or maybe it was Cook who did it. I forget, but our listeners should Google it. And pardon the language I'm going to use, but National Review did a piece. Joe was always an asshole.
Yes.
And it goes back throughout his half century of government involvement, showing his corruption, his lying, his anger, his going after his enemies. Remember, again, for those who would say, oh, goodness, Jerry, he'd never do this. This is the same guy, in order to get elected and reelected in Delaware, lied that his first wife was killed by a drunk driver.
Right.
He ruined that person's life.
Yeah.
There was no drunk driver. There was no alcohol involved. But yet, Senator Biden didn't care. He was all about ruining other people's lives if it meant advancing himself. I'm sorry.
And here's no need to apologize, Jerry. I mean, here's the thing to remember, right? When Joe Biden ran in 1988 for president, he was essentially disqualified. It was 88, right? It wasn't 92 that he was knocked out over the. Well,
he ran a couple. He ran a couple times, but 88.
My point is, it took a lackluster Democratic bench to elevate Joe Biden to being the vice president of the United States in the first place, right? Barack Obama needed his own Dick Cheney, someone who'd been around DC for a very, very long time.
Well, let me throw up a theory here.
Yeah.
Joe Biden, again, his relationship with Byrd, his of being against busing.
Yep.
He was the sponsor of the 91 or the early 90s, the crime bill.
Yep.
And so I think those around Obama, because remember, Obama was never vetted.
Right.
And his radical background never truly came to light, but his advisors knew that it could.
Yes.
So the best way to shield Obama's radicalness was to bring in a good old boy.
Yeah.
And that's what Biden was. Biden was the good old boy.
The establishmentarian. Yes.
Yeah.
And so this guy who was deemed ineligible or unelectable to run for president back in 1988, 1992, whenever it was, he gets his flagging career bolstered. He runs. But I want to make clear here, they didn't choose him. The Obama sycophants didn't choose Biden, but for his deficiencies. Right.
The fact that he was a closeted racist, the fact that he was, the backroom dealer. They needed someone who was like the worst that Washington had to offer.
Sure.
In order to elevate Barack Obama.
Right. To make Barack Obama look better. My point is that and then, as Barack Obama himself said, never underestimate Joe's capacity to F things up. Right. Which I wouldn't doubt is a reference to how he handled his office. But for the fact that we were in the midst of a pandemic and the Democratic bench was so horrible going into 2020, right? Joe Biden was the only viable candidate they had. And again, not to sort of revisit election 2020, but again, I'm not saying the election 2020 was stolen on election day or even in the weeks leading up to election day, but certainly the Democrats were able to engineer the pandemic to benefit or engineer regulations. So the point is, Joe Biden, the only way Joe Biden could be elected president of the United States, given everything that we know about him, is to stack the deck in the media in favor of him, to completely trash the sitting president of the United States and make him completely toxic to the voters that you need him to be,
and leverage and politicized and a pandemic. Exactly. And again, for those who would say, well, Andrew,
I'm sorry, Jerry, let me be really clear. And to take advantage of the idiocy of the guy who was in charge, who didn't know how to respond to this. And so that let's
let me comment on that, because this is something that has been driving me crazy for a couple of days now, which is, every time I hear Donald Trump talk now and he's talking about draining the swamp, and he's going to go after the DOJ and I'm going after you. And I said to myself, he had his shot and he didn't do it. And worse than that, you and I, during the campaign silly season in 2020 and even in 2019, you and I on this podcast, on our radio programs, we were saying, look what the Democrats are doing.
Yes.
Look how they're resetting the table, how they're changing election law. And what did Donald Trump do? Nothing. Nothing.
And it comes down to, right, once again, I'll say this again. Donald Trump campaign 2016, Donald Trump campaign 2024 is not the same campaign as 2016 or 2020. 2016, Donald Trump had everything going in his favor. He had good people around him who were giving him good advice. There was a huge unknown going on. He was running against an incredibly toxic figure, Hillary Clinton. We'd had 8 years of Barack Obama. Now, again, we have 4 years of Joe Biden, which is like the Barack Obama administration on steroids. But when you don't have the people who understand how to capitalize that. Now, again, I say this knowing, and everybody's going to say, knowing that Donald Trump is substantially ahead of everybody else in the polls. And that certainly matters going into the primary. But come election season, the general election, he needs Kellyanne Conway on his side, and he's not going to have Kellyanne Conway on his side. And so certainly going into, if Donald Trump were to win, it wouldn't be the same as well, because folks have made it impossible for anybody or for very few good people to go into the administration. I'm sorry, Jerry. Because I want to spend some time, maybe we do it now, maybe we do it later, spend some time talking about the other candidates running, because I teased this last week that I was off Ron DeSantis.
Well, let's do it now, because I want to comment on what you just said, and that is I don't like the focus on the polls. I don't know what a July national poll tells us about the primary. It tells us nothing. It tells us that more people know who Trump is.
And we're seeing Trump in the news, which is part of the problem, right? And it's the disingenuousness, right?
But this also goes to the whole how the establishment kind of crafts and creates, fortifies what's going to happen.
Right.
The fact is, it is Marxist dialectic, out of synthesis. Yes. A July 2023 poll, an April 2023 poll really tells us nothing about what's going to happen in 2024. But yet it's all over the place, and it's constant, it's ubiquitous. It's what everyone says. Well, he's ahead of the polls. Well, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. When I was a kid, my mom always said to me things like, don't call your sister an idiot, because words have power. And if you label someone something, it's destined to happen. That's what's happening.
The smart daughter and the beautiful daughter. Yeah, I understand this. It's to me, yes, and the popular narrative is designed because they want Donald Trump to be the nominee. The Democrats want
Yes.
Trump to be the nominee because they think they can beat him again. They have a reasonable assurance. Plus, they can run their playbook over again, and they think that the RNC hasn't figured out how to deal with it. And again, we say this, once again, sort of going down this road. I don't think I have a dog in this race.
Well, let's go through them.
Right. So you have Donald Trump, right?
Right.
You have Ron DeSantis, who it just has pissed me off to no end.
I don't get your disconnect with DeSantis.
Well, I mean, listen. I think the straw that broke the camel's back for me was him floating the idea of RFK for a cabinet position.
Really, that turns you off? I mean,
yes, it does.
I mean, why?
RFK should not be anywhere. No credible Republican should ever be uttering the words that I'm going to include Robert F. Kennedy Jr. anywhere in his cabinet or her cabinet.
I mean, I get your point, but I don't think it's disqualifying. I mean, especially if you're.
I'm just saying it's a straw that broke the camel's back for me. I just,
what else is that? I mean, to me, I think that's, pardon me, but I think that's a silly reason. I think he's thinking out loud. There's a populist segment of the Republican Party that wrongly, but nonetheless likes JFK Jr. RFK Jr.
Yes.
So,
but Jerry, that's just it. It's
what else? What
I want is a politician who's not going to. The thing about Ron DeSantis is he's supposed to be a deep thinker. He's supposed to be a serious candidate. He's supposed to be a serious conservative. And so I don't want him sort of bending and swaying because because he hears, I'm not going to say it. He hears advisors mouthing the words.
Right. I mean, but that's. But the Republicans have always had the consultants problem, and I mean, my goodness, Kristi Noem, who's also running for president, or is discussed. She wrongly took the advice of consultants when it came to the NCAA, the NCAA, and transgendered sports. She tried to split the middle there. But then again, however, so did Mike Pence. But you're big on Pence. Mike Pence.
Well, no, see when he was
governor.
Listen, I love Mike Pence to death, but now I'm wavering on Mike Pence. My support for Mike Pence.
Yeah, but my point is that when Mike Pence was governor of Indiana, he tried to play on both sides on the transgendered issue, on the gay issue, but that didn't stop you from supporting him.
No, it didn't. It didn't stop me from supporting him because, on balance, there are many, many other issues upon which I think Mike Pence has done a very good job. But I will tell you what. Let me go through this. So there's the DeSantis thing. I like Vivek Ramaswamy. I've liked him, and then Vivek Ramaswamy gets asked a question. He gets caught in the cross, between the eyes with a question about 9/11. Do you believe the results of the 9/11 Commission, which is a crazy question? And he turns around and answers it, well, no, I don't believe everything that the 9/11 Commission says, which then gets interpreted that he's saying,
right, but the thing is, he's right about that. Because
I agree with you. Because I agree with you. But yes, time out. Let's walk through this. I agree.
There's a politician, but there's someone seeking office who's actually doing what you want. That is answering the question seriously.
No. Okay, but time out for a second.
He gets screwed.
The answer to the question is, what does the 9/11 Commission and the 9/11 Commission's findings have anything to do with what's going on in America in 2023? We are dealing with, now back to my point is that yes, let's walk through what Vivek Ramaswamy said. Right. What he said specifically was that he believes that the U.S. government did not properly investigate or report on what the government of Saudi Arabia knew about the planning and execution of the 9/11 attacks.
Yes, and
I
also
agree with him.
And my issue with the 9/11 after reports, not just just broadly speaking, is we absolutely know, yes, about the firewall between domestic and foreign intelligence and the Clinton administration's firewall that precluded our intelligence communities from communicating with each other. But more importantly, it was the anti-profiling. Al Gore, as vice president, was the tip of the spear, so to speak, with this politically correct, or what we would say now, woke. The government can't profile.
I don't want any profiling done.
And the thing is that we now know that if the hijackers were profiled, right, then maybe 9/11 doesn't happen. So Ramaswamy,
Vivek Ramaswamy
is correct.
Yes, but the problem
we never got
is,
the whole truth from the government.
Right, but the problem is that by now answering the question and voicing the skepticism, it then becomes a whole thing where he has to go on defense to say that he's not a 9/11.
I get it, but then again, I'll throw back at you. Then what you need to do is listen to the consultants and do what DeSantis.
Okay, time out. So here's my point.
So you want your cake and eat it too.
No, Jerry. Just there's a whole narrative that I'm going down here.
All right,
everybody's pissing me off here.
All right,
I got a lot of problems with you people. So then you get Mike Pence, who I love. I think I love Mike Pence. Mike Pence turns around and gets.
I got a comment. I don't understand your love affair with Mike Pence. I think Mike Pence was a backbencher member of Congress. He was a middling, a kind of a do nothing governor. I just don't understand the appeal of Mike Pence.
All right, so Mike Pence, I've known Mike Pence not well, but I've known Mike Pence for many years. His committee was the first committee that I testified before in Congress back.
Well, just because you are acquainted with someone doesn't mean that.
Jerry, you're talking about why Jerry, you're talking. Listen, what did Newt Gingrich say? All politics is personal. Anyway, my point is, Mike Pence turns around and then repeats the leftist progressive press narrative that Vivek Ramaswamy is a 9/11 truther. And so I'm like, a pox on everybody. I'm done. I'm back to 2012, where I don't care who the nominee. I'm not saying that. Obviously, I care who the nominee is, but it's like every. And listen. We know this. You never let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
It sounds like that's what you're doing.
Well, yes, of course, Jerry. And at some point in time,
let's
hold on. I say this because I say this knowing that we are now just under 2 weeks out from the first Republican presidential debate, and I will have a much better feeling for who I like and who I don't like after that debate, which is the whole purpose of the debate.
All right. Well, listen.
It don't matter right now.
So what? So there's DeSantis, Kristi Noem, Chris Christie, Donald Trump, Mike Pence,
Doug Burgum,
Ramaswamy, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott. What's a Bergen? What's a Bergen? What is that?
Burgum. He's the governor of North Dakota. Douglas Burgum.
Yeah. No, not even on the list.
Apparently running for the position of a Secretary of Commerce. I had a conversation with North Dakota poll.
Yeah, well, good. He's a moron.
No, he's a very smart guy, apparently.
Well, you know what? But again, by your own standard, why run for president? Demean the process if really what you want to be is some a bureaucrat.
Listen,
shame on him,
Jerry. I get this. I agree with you that you clear the field, but it's a cluster start, and
Youngkin might jump in, right?
Oh God, please, no, he's not going to jump in, and if he does, he's an idiot too for jumping in.
I tell you what, here's so I'm not.
And I like Glenn Youngkin, and I like the job he's doing as governor. Finish your term as governor, and then run for president.
Well, when's this term up? It's up next year.
It's
up in 25.
Up in 2025. Yes.
All right. Here's the thing. Ramaswamy, speaks the truth. So therefore, anyone who would then leverage and mischaracterize what he said, in my mind, is a hack. So Pence is a hack. Has to go with his creepy dark eyebrows and his white hair. He looks like a child molester.
Jerry, come on.
He has to leave.
That's uncalled for. Jerry,
he's the creepy.
That's punching down.
I'm punching down, babe, because he looks. I'm sorry. How you look matters.
Jerry, play the hits. Local. Stop punching down.
I'm telling you, he is an off-putting. He's off-putting. Now, God bless him. I know he's a Christian, and I don't want to say bad things about my Christian brothers and sisters, but the fact of the matter is, his whole aura is off-putting.
I disagree.
How he speaks, how he looks, even the idiotic going to pump gas and doesn't have.
Oh my God! Oh, I'm sorry, Jerry. I'm sorry. You know something? You're absolutely correct on that part. That was the other thing I totally forgotten. That was the first thing that set me off about Mike.
What an idiot!
What
a phony baloney. I'm sorry,
and here's baloney. It comes down to, right? It's one of those things where it's interesting. Folks, you do. Jerry and I have been around politics long enough, and I've been around. I don't. Have you ever worked in and around presidential campaigns at all, Jerry? I don't think in the 25 years you and I, almost 30 years you and I have known each other.
The Bush 1 and Bush 2. George Bush Sr. I was very involved in '88 in the state campaign in New Jersey.
Yeah,
I helped host Barbara Bush.
So I've
New Jersey.
Done some work with a couple of different presidential campaigns over the years, and there
not 88. Did I say 88? I'm sorry, 92. I apologize.
There are things that candidates have to do in order to become president, right? And that maybe to me that's part of my problem, is that I'm sort of beholden to the old.
No, what's this list? This Andrew list?
Well, things like you write the book, right? You lay out your agenda. You go out and you demonstrate that you are a deep thinker about policy issues. But the problem, of course, is that the littlest thing, the dumbest thing, can slip you up.
I'm sorry. Did you just say that you? I'm sorry. Did you just say you have to show yourself to be a deep thinker?
I think you need to show yourself.
What century? You're not even the. You're not even the. What are you?
Joe,
going back.
I'm going back to the 20th. Pardon me. I'm going back to the
18th century.
Back to the 20th century on this.
The 18th century.
I think Ronald Reagan was a deep thinker. I think George
Reagan was
a deep thinker.
Oh, he was not.
Yes, he was.
George Bush, the first.
The first absolutely was a deep thinker.
About what?
He was absolutely deep thinker about foreign policy, about international affairs. The man had been ambassador to the United Nations. He'd been CIA director. 100%. One of the most qualified men to become president.
The CIA director is a deep thinker. Have you seen the trouble of the CIA recently?
Jerry, I'm telling you, listen, again, we can talk about how things have fallen off, to say the least. Right?
Herbert Walker Bush, a deep thinker.
100%, without a doubt.
Well, all right. Your definition of deep thinker and mine, I tell you what, you're right about Reagan, and here's why. Because Reagan understood that he had to promote a philosophy.
Right.
And so what Reagan did was he did his homework. Reagan would never consider himself a deep thinker. I think the number one evidence of a deep thinker is someone who doesn't see themselves as a deep thinker.
Probably. I think that's probably
Reagan knew that he had to stand on the intellect and the moral shoulders of those who came before him, which is why he read Russell Kirk, which is why he read the great conservative thinkers and philosophers. Reagan
and why he surrounded himself with similar deep thinking conservatives.
Yeah, but post Reagan, I wouldn't put George Herbert Walker Bush had no philosophy, Andrew. How could you be a deep thinker? How could you be a deep thinker and have no philosophy?
I think he had a philosophy. I think he had a philosophy of American greatness and wanted to maintain Americans' great position in the world. But my point in the end is
why did he stop and not go into Iraq? He could have had Pax Americana and chose not to.
Because I think, then this may be, we can disagree with him on this, but I think that may be one of the failings of sort of an adherence to the post-World War II.
George Herbert Walker Bush was an internationalist. He was a globalist.
Yes, but okay, that doesn't mean that he wasn't a deep thinker. All right, again, we can disagree, right? Right. So here's my point. To go back to, I knew that Sarah Palin was not serious about running for president when Sarah Palin didn't do things like go and visit, foreign countries, engage in a tour, and write a book about foreign affairs.
Or forget writing a book. She didn't read a book.
Read a book. Yes. Okay. That's my point. Yeah. So So Mike Pence, for instance, he comes out of the Trump administration and he turns around and he puts together a great think tank called Advancing American Freedom. They do good policy.
It's so great that I have seen nothing from them come across my desk.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. That's a measurement, Jerry. That's your measurement of
I'm the editor of Real Clear Policy.
I understand that, Jerry, and I don't know whether or not they are thinking about it that way. But the point is, they're doing anything. They're doing research.
What research?
They're doing research on
what?
On public policy.
On what?
Environmental policy, energy policy, foreign policy. They're doing all kinds of research on these.
I haven't heard Mike Pence say anything cogent on the energy crisis that we're experiencing right now. He hasn't pushed back on the environmental alarmism. The wildfire.
Sure. Yes, he has. But the point being is that all of the good work that someone can do can be completely undone by some boneheaded move, like going and pretending to pump gas and talking about an issue and forgetting to actually push which kind of gas you're getting. Listen, we've got a whole way so that you and I can agree on something, Jerry, or disagree on little things along the way.
I think here's what I think. I think that again, Mike Pence is a politician, and he does not. He should not be running for president. I think he's off-putting. I think he's undistinguished. Kristi Noem, very similar. I think she's attractive. I think she's a woman. I think for demographics, she covers certain bases, but unfortunately, I think she's compromised on conservative principle as governor. She hasn't. Some would say that she has betrayed conservative principle. That's not true, but she has compromised. Chris Christie, again, I've always wanted to like him because he has this pugnacious kind of attitude. He's a puncher. But the problem with Chris Christie is it goes back to Bridgegate, where instead of fighting the Obama administration, the DOJ, he literally threw his staff under the bus. Right. And a good man doesn't do that.
Well, he's disqualified himself now because he is completely in the clutches of, or become an apologist for, the Justice Department in these insane prosecutions of Donald Trump.
Yeah. I still like Nikki Haley. I think she was a good governor. She was, again, the ambassador to the United Nations. She has done a good job kind of walking that line of not alienating the Trump segment of the party, but also showing some independence. I know that there are others in the Republican Party. Conservatives don't like her. I like her. I tell you who I love, and I'd vote for him in a second. I'd go down if he called me up and said he wants to go beat up some guys in an alley. I'd go down and help him. Is Tim Scott?
Yes,
I think Tim Scott is a good and decent man. But even Tim Scott, right? He has gone after DeSantis on the Florida doesn't teach slavery nonsense, and even he bit on that. Again, a despicable lie that in Florida the public schools are not teaching about slavery. It is a complete and utter lie. They are not teaching the benefits of slavery. A complete lie. Tim Scott did fall for that, but again, he's in a primary and is trying to distinguish himself from DeSantis. Not unlike what others are doing in terms of trying to distinguish themselves from Trump. But the guy, look, the standard. In terms of intellect, in terms of what he says, I agree with almost all the time. It's Ramaswamy.
Yeah.
However, if you want someone who is philosophical, who is the kind of the reincarnation of Reaganism, it is head and shoulders above everyone else. It's Ron DeSantis. Did you see recently when they asked him about Trump and the personal attacks? He went in and gave an eloquent explanation on Federalist number 10, and Madison, right, and the founders. This guy, Ron DeSantis, the problem with Republicans is that they're all a bunch of morons. Ron DeSantis is the guy. and
Yes.
we shouldn't be making him work for it this hard. There should be a golden road at the end of it, the nomination, and we should be all carrying Ron DeSantis to the nomination. But instead, the Republicans are again the stupid party, and we're just beating up on the guy.
Which was going to be one of my topics. I mean, it gets down to this, and I'll say this much:
Ron DeSantis is the guy. Period.
One of the things that one of the issues that Jerry, or one of the things that Jerry's saying that has great merit here. Yeah, politics is not a zero-sum game. Just because you win, I lose, blah, blah. I mean, I guess in some ways it is. My point is that there is a tremendous amount of talent out there that Ron DeSantis needs, whether it's on the ground organizational skills, whether or not it's folks helping him do messaging, getting the word out, and allied organizations. And it's not a question of money and other candidates sucking up money, though I suppose they are. But there is a real talent gap. Ron DeSantis has had a certain amount of talent working for his campaign. Some of it has helped, some of it has hurt. I think part of what you're saying, Jerry, is that it's not necessarily Ron DeSantis's campaign's fault that Ron DeSantis hasn't broken out more from the rest of the pack.
No, I think it's the Republican Party's fault. I think it's it is the rank and file Republicans. I think it's the RNC. Look, I'd rig the game. They should learn from the Democrats. Rig it. Yeah. Rig the game so the guy who can win or the girl who could win wins the nomination. Rig it. In fact, I'm sorry. I'll say this, and I'm going to say a bad word, but fuck the primaries. Seriously, let's forget it. Go back to the back room.
Well, all right. This is important.
Let's pick the best person.
This gets into. I'm going to tell an anecdote that I may have told on the air. I don't think I can tell all the players who were involved. But
I am sorry for saying a bad word.
No, it's all right. Don't worry about it. I was when I was living in Maryland. We had a problem with a congressional district and a congressional race. The race, and folks can figure this out, they'll noodle this through, but folks can, where we had a retiring sitting congressman, there was an open primary, and there was a blistering, brutal primary on the Republican side, just brutal Republican primary. And the Republican candidate emerged damaged, and the Democrats took a seat that should have been an easy walk for the Democrats, or should have been an easy walk for the Republicans. The following cycle, 2 years later, I saw the same thing happening. And I was like, I'm not going to let this happen. Republicans need this seat. We need to sit down and get into a back room and duke it out. And sometimes, and I'm going to use a bad word here, sometimes somebody has to be the asshole in a room and say, you're going to run and you're not going to run. We're going to get behind this guy because this is much too difficult. And, I didn't have to wind up being that asshole. I was the asshole in the room, but I didn't wind up having to sort of make any orders. One candidate in that primary said, something, I'm going to sit this one out, and actually eventually got out of politics entirely. And the other one wound up winning and has held on to that seat for more than a decade. And sometimes you have to do that. There is merit. It's not just right. There is a bad connotation to the smoke-filled back room, right? And the concept of party bosses, and I understand this. But on the other hand, there is something to be said for parties that are at contretemps with one another. I'm going to pull out a $5 word there. Opposing parties sitting down in a room away from the public eye to actually air their grievances to one another and come to a decision and say, something. With some honest broker in the room negotiating between the two of them. Jerry's talking about rigging, but the reality is some adult needs to sit down. Sorry, go ahead, Jerry.
But here's the thing, right? Democracy, for democracy's sake, is not a positive good. I don't understand why those who don't pay attention to politics or policy, who aren't engaged, don't know what's happening on Capitol Hill, don't know who their senators are or their sitting congressmen, somehow that person is going to have influence whether or not Donald Trump is the nominee.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I don't want a podunk, ignorant, can't read. My sister's on meth, deciding the Republican nominee. There is something to be said that, and again, there is some representative democracy in the Republican Party, in the Democratic Party. I'm sure this is true as well. If you're engaged, well, then you can run for committee man. But however, there are elections to be a committee person. Every district, right, has two committee persons, a female and a male, in how the Republican Party works. And what we ought to do is and the committee persons then vote on a county chairman and then the county chairman then vote on a state chairman. I think what we need in the Republican Party is stop with the podunk. Stop with the people who show up at a Trump rally, with their wife beaters on. I don't want the nominee coming from those people. I'm telling the truth. There's too much at stake here. I have 5 kids. Our country is going in the wrong direction. I want those who are engaged and know policy. So let the nomination be up to the state chairman, the county chairman, and the committee persons. That's who decides this.
I don't know. I because having been in that process, I'm not so sure I have a tremendous amount of faith.
Look, you're going to have jerks. You're going to have look. The worst people I've ever met in my life in politics are those. I was. By the way, I was on county committee, and I know you were too.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is,
it's a little different in Maryland.
But however, I knew everything. I knew about tax policy. I knew what was being voted on. I knew who could be trusted, who couldn't be trusted. I knew everything. What we're doing now is we're literally letting people who watch NASCAR or WWE.
I don't have a problem with people watching NASCAR. I don't have a problem.
I'm making a point.
I know you are. I know you're exaggerating.
You take those people out of the equation. Donald Trump doesn't win this nomination.
No, but on the other hand,
why do we want these people?
On the other hand,
Donald Trump.
You take those people out of the equation. The Republicans don't beat Hillary Clinton in 2016.
I don't know. I don't know because you're right about that. You're right.
Here's the thing. It's all about It's all about balance, right? This is why we have separation of powers. This is why we have 2 houses of Congress. This is why at one time we had.
I'm not saying don't let them vote for the presidency. What I'm saying is, in the primary process, let the parties decide this.
Yeah, but again, that has its own problems, right? Then where we wind up with elitists.
You know what? When I'm dealing with regulatory policy and this nonsense banning gas stoves.
Right, but Jerry,
I want some people who know.
Hold on for a second. Let's say, but party hacks are what get us Joe Biden as president. To go back to your phrase, right? Or to your, party.
Yes. You made my point. Yes. Party hacks. President. Yes. They won.
Then on the Republican side, Mike Pence being president.
No, Pence wouldn't. No, because the party hacks would reject him.
I'm not so sure. Again, sort of getting down to it. It's what works on paper. Who.
Well, all right, fine. I tell you what. I'd rather have anyone else but Trump or Biden. So
all right. I'll agree with it.
So Mike Pence, I'll take a Mike Pence.
This is the point. It's a hierarchy and it's ranking, which is where I am now in terms of sort of.
Let me ask you a question because you know this, and I know your kind of libertarian leanings. This whole open primary. I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's not open primaries, but this whole primary process, it came as the anti-Watergate democracy that people know better. Right. The people don't know better. Democracy is not a good thing. Look what democracy got us in Afghanistan. It got us the Taliban.
No.
Democracy is not necessarily good.
I agree with you. Democracy for
every democracy, by the way, in the history of the world, every democracy in the history of the world, save the U.S., literally has denigrated into tyranny.
Right, because it becomes a mobocracy.
Yes,
that's absolutely true. And it has to be.
And the mobocracy has given us Donald Trump.
Power. Well, but again. Right. Of course, there are checks on that power in the end. Now, what you're saying, hold on, Jerry, let's sort of go back here and talk about what you're saying, right? Because what you're talking about here is
I'm very radical today, aren't I?
No, you are. But again, it's what got us the 17th Amendment to the Constitution. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this, this is the amendment that gave us the direct election of senators, right? When the founding fathers, this is the point that I was trying to make earlier. When the founding fathers created our structure of government, the legislative branch was divided into two houses, one of which was elected from the people, the House of Representatives, and the other one which was supposed to be chosen by state legislatures. And it's essentially it's a version of what you're talking about here. That a certain group of body that has a relationship with the people itself and is accountable to the people, they're the ones who choose the senators.
Let me. And
it has merit in that regard. My point in the end is I disagree with Jerry. I think that NASCAR voters have merit. I think that people who are
right. I get it. I was just trying to make a point about podunk. Look, I don't mind NASCAR, although NASCAR has gone all woke, diversity, equity, inclusion nonsense. Here's the bottom line. Just to bring this, put a pin in it.
Hold on, time it. No, before you get to the bottom line, because I want you to get to that. Because that's a point we can't miss. Let's not underestimate the fact that there are folks who are working overtime to transform NASCAR into something that it wasn't.
They've succeeded.
Yes, because they want to change the NASCAR voter. They want it because they know the NASCAR voting block is an important voting block. The bottom line, Jerry.
Well, NASCAR. Look, here's the bottom line for me, and that is, I believe in the rule of law, not the rule of men. And America is. We started the program talking about the corruption of Joe Biden. We're talking about, I knew you were going to ask that question. Well, the answer to the question is, the question to me is, how do we stop America's unraveling? How do we stop the descent into madness, into tribalism, balkanization? Every sector of the American economy and the American culture is under attack right now. Everything is under attack. So the question is, how do we stop it? The answer is we need to go return to our roots, our founding roots. We need to be governed by law and not governed by men.
Yes.
And the more we democratize, the more we push democracy, and we romanticize the voter, we romanticize the people. Stop it.
Time out
we
for
need
a second,
to
Jerry.
uphold the law. It's about the law.
Hold on. And it's an important point that you raised. We weren't even going to talk about this today. But talking about Ron DeSantis, this removal of this prosecutor from office down in Florida is a prime example. Is you tracking this, Jerry?
Yeah, of course. Well, the left says how horrible, she's elected by the people. Ron DeSantis is being anti-democracy. Yeah, because she's derelict in her duty.
Right.
Because she's not following the law. And so therefore Ron DeSantis has by law certain triggers that he can push in order to remove her. It's government by law, governing not by men, not by humans or men and women. I don't want to be governed by Ron DeSantis. I want to be governed by Ron DeSantis following the law.
That's why I raise the issue, is because it's a prime example of what you're talking about here. Listen, before we go, because do we want to continue to talk a little bit about the Joe Biden thing, or do we want to go and talk about the non-vetting of Barack Obama? Because
Barack Obama's done. The fact of the matter is, he spent 8 years more or less tempering what he wanted to do. But this presidency, Joe Biden has done more in 4 years to implement the very radical Barack Obama agenda than Barack Obama could ever have hoped for. Again, we talk about how, when did things begin to go awry, go wrong? There's lots of inflection points or points in American history we can point to, but I think the tipping point was Barack Obama. Barack Obama becoming president?
I think the re-weaponization. It's so funny. I did
IRS, DOJ,
exactly.
You name it.
I used to, and it wasn't a joke. I used to talk about how we could equate the Barack Obama presidency with the Nixon presidency in terms of what was being done in terms of silencing the opposition. And it's interesting, right? Because you get into the things that Donald Trump was charged with in this indictment. We talked about it quite a bit last week. But the issue of depriving people of their rights and how Donald Trump was being charged criminally for that. And I would submit that Barack Obama did more, if not worse, because it was a direct impact. The Obama administration was doing more.
He did more and worse. And again, I know we talked about it last week, but I'll say it here. The J6 indictment, the most recent indictment of Donald Trump, and I am no Donald Trump fan, obviously, from this conversation. I am off the Trump boat, so to speak, or off the train or whatever. The fact of the matter is that this indictment is maybe the most dangerous action by DOJ since the times of Jim Crow and pre-civil rights. Essentially, this DOJ is taking what ought to be political and making it criminal.
Right.
And if that's the new standard, then we are going to stifle speech. We're going to have censorship, and we're going to have candidates, and we're going to have a rule of the oligarch. Yeah. This is where we're heading. We're heading towards a kind of a Russian-style oligarchy, where the rich and powerful, Hunger Games, where the rich and powerful have sway and have power over the.
But more to the point, in creating rules that in the end either don't apply to them or that they can afford. I mean,
the hierarchy. There's two tiers
of these things.
We've talked about this, where it's not hypocrisy. It's not good for thee, not for me. No, it's not hypocrisy. Wake up, people! It is hierarchy. Yeah. They believe they're better than us. I mean, you see it all the time, where they want to defund the police, but they have private security. They want to allow for criminals to roam the streets and riot, but they have gated gates around their homes. They want to take more of your resources, your money, for migrants and for diversity, equity, inclusion projects. Yet they keep for themselves riches and resources. They tell us not to use our car or fly, yet they have private jets. And they, again, the hierarchy. It's amazing what is in front of us, but we're close.
Everything that this administration is doing is building on this. So whether it is creating rules and proposals that will effectively double the price of gas from where it is now to over $6 a gallon, whether it is to mandate that that more electric cars are on the road that average people cannot afford.
Andrew,
whether it is rules about dishwashers or stoves or. Yes.
And again, and they all talk from the same talking points. This morning on social media, I can't tell you how many posts I've seen where electricity is so expensive because of climate change, because of the extreme temperatures. And a colleague of ours, a former colleague of ours at WBAL, tweeted out that extreme temps and climate change, and there's an AP story about a woman who has to run her air conditioner all the time, and her electricity bill is through the roof.
Yes.
Well, my goodness, are you so uncurious? The reason why electricity is so high is because of the policies of this presidency. Right. Number one. Number two, by the way, it's not the hottest July on record.
That's true.
In fact, the hottest July on record, I think, was in 2014. And by the way, the reason why there are high temps in places like Tempe, Arizona, is because of the concrete effect that we talked about on the program.
The urban island heat effect. Yeah,
exactly right. And in fact, if you look at NASA data and you look at ground temperature data, the Earth has been cooling for 8 years. No, there is no sea rise that's causing New Orleans to lower. In fact, if New Orleans if there's sea rise in New Orleans, how could it be only New Orleans? Yes. Right? Because if the ice caps are melting, sea rise happens everywhere. The problem with New Orleans is that there's a natural occurrence where a city already under sea level
is
shrinking a bit. The fact is that they have to tell us climate change. They have to, because when we're paying so much for gas, when we can't travel to see our parents, and when energy is through the roof, it's not because of their policies. It's because of climate change. Even this nonsense now with the wildfires. The wildfires are not because of climate change. If you look at the history, there are fewer wildfires today than there were 100 years ago. The fact is, environmental policies that prohibit the clearing out of underbrush is causing wildfires. And right now in Hawaii, we don't know yet, but it looks like there is this wildfire is because of overgrown non-native grass.
Sure. Right.
But my goodness. Anyway, I'm sorry. I
get it, Jerry. I mean, this is exactly it. You know, there is a narrative that is being pushed, right? When you go on and you watch the Weather Channel or your local weather, and all of a sudden, what used to be yellow, yellow temperatures is now, fire red.
Red with
the
fire.
Whole red across, yes, because we're all on fire. Yeah, it's all designed to provoke a narrative that is at work here. It is crazy.
Every single leading environmental indicator, in terms of clean water and clean air, in terms of more trees and forest, everything is on the upswing. Everything is on the positive. And also with ice caps. No, there's no evidence. I'm sorry, you know more than me in this area, but the sea ice around Antarctica is not melting.
No,
yes, and it goes back and forth.
Sure, of course.
Right.
And then there is the question as to whether or not ocean temperatures are rising because of something going on in the climate, or because there are undersea volcanoes on undersea volcanic activity.
Right. Well, that's another thing too.
Imagine when you have something heating the water under the water, it actually gets.
Right. But also, again, let's not talk. Maybe we should do a show on climate change. But the fact of the matter is, the solar activity, the orbit of the Earth, El Niños, weather patterns,
all of those things.
All of these things impact. Now, climate change is occurring, i.e., weather happens. But this idea,
and the climate changes. That's the whole point. Is that there is a cycle that goes on. By the way, we would be remiss, Jerry. I don't know if you and I talked about this, but if we didn't say kudos to Myron Ebell from the Competitive Enterprise Institute, who is now retiring, or they have announced his retirement. So congratulations to him. Jerry, were you a fan of the band?
What?
Were you a fan of the band?
Yes, I know. Robbie Robertson passed away, 80 years old.
80 years old. Yeah. Very sad. Huge fan. You've seen.
I tell you the funny thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, the funny thing is that he's born 1943, and in my mind, 43 isn't that old. Only because my father was born 1938.
Yes.
So it's like, holy cow! Like
I get it. Believe me, and it makes you want to draw closer to your folks, because you got guys like Robbie Robertson.
It also that we're losing legacy artists. It's interesting.
100%.
Dion DiMucci. I love Dion.
Oh yeah, I saw you tweet out about him.
Yeah, so Dion DiMucci is coming out with a new album, and Dion is 85 years old.
Is this the duets album that he's doing?
I think so. Yes, but 85.
Yes, it's
crazy. And he looks fantastic.
He does. He looks great for 85.
Yeah.
Remember, 85 is the new. Right, what is it? 85 is the new 75. 85 is before. And I say this because my dad's 87. So yeah,
80 and then 75 is the new 68.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. So I urge you, if you haven't seen it, there's a great documentary. I think it was We Were Brothers, about the band. Go and check that out. It's good stuff. I was sort of hit between the eyes. I've been listening to
their debut album had all kinds of what we consider now classics.
Oh yeah.
The Weight was on their initial album, their debut album. Now the thing about The Weight is that for them it never sold well. It wasn't a big hit. But later, Aretha Franklin, I didn't realize Aretha Franklin and others covered The Weight and had success with it.
Yeah,
now, of course, it
was included, I believe, on the Big Chill album, and that helped us. Well.
I tell you what, the Big Chill did, since you raised it, that caused a revival of Motown
Sure.
and 60s, late 60s music.
Agreed. Yeah. No,
I bought the cassette.
I had the vinyl album, Jerry. In fact,
I had a
still over
cassette.
here. I have the vinyl album.
Great album.
Jerry, you're on Sunday. What you got going on? And what do you want next? What do you want?
Hey, who was the famous actor, by the way, who played the dead guy in
Kevin Costner, his first role.
It was Kevin Costner.
Yeah, it was his first role, and he was cut out, and then he came back. Lawrence Kasdan brought him back for Silverado, which is a great movie if you haven't seen it.
Yeah,
remember Silverado with Kevin Kline?
Yep.
There you go. Hey,
Kevin Kline, a great actor, by the way. Yes.
Are you not on Sunday? Are you on Sunday?
I'm on Sunday. By WBAL. I did a good hour. Look, it's the best Sunday show you'll hear. Period.
Yes.
WBAL. The Jerry. Go podcast at WBAL.com. Podcast Jerry Rogers.
So I am in for Steve Gruber all of next week.
Wow,
check that out.
Busy guy.
SteveGruberShow.com. We've got the lunch hour, Wayne Cruz this week. I don't remember who next week's is. We are going to be on a break for a week, though, Jerry, right? Because you're going on vacation.
I am. We're heading to the beach. Yes.
Yeah. So you and I will do a show when you come back. And then we've got your new show that's coming up that you're going to start recording. That is, and then I'm on WMAL the last week of August, beginning of the first week of September. Jerry, what do you want folks to do?
Oh my goodness! Find the truth, plant your feet, and stand firm. God bless you.
Have a great week, everybody. Have fun, and please stay safe.